nice to meet you.
It's very nice to meet you. Thank you so much for taking the time to spend with me today.
Well,
I was telling Jake, because we're doing a two-parter of
okay.
On Farmer's Daughter. So there's going to
Okay.
be two whole episodes back to back. And I was telling her that you guys are the first country artists that we've had on the show.
Wow. Well, we feel
Yeah.
honored. You know,
Yeah.
we really do because I was thinking that about your podcast and it's all about the 90s and stuff and I go, I miss the 90s. I totally miss the 90s because I was so immersed
Mhm.
in the country scene. And so it's like when unfortunately when Gord Downie got sick and the Tragically Hip came out of every corner of media, it's like, how did I miss the Tragically Hip? Like, how did I miss that whole era? Because I was so immersed in the countryside of things.
There was a very active and vibrant country scene in the 90s.
Yes, and it was dominant. Like it was. I think the world stats, if I'm quoting correctly, the market share of country music was over 50% of the purchased music products. So it was pretty dominant with the Garth Brooks and all the major superstars, right? So kind of, and then we were always watching CMT to see if they were playing us and stuff like that, and listening to country radio.
No kidding.
Yeah.
And I grew up in a small town in Alberta, so country music was like really big in my junior high, like growing up.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
yes. Hmm.
Yeah. Faith Hill was just coming out. I remember it being such a huge deal.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And where are you from originally?
Originally from Brandon, Manitoba.
Wonderful.
Yeah, right in the middle of the wheat country, wheat fields, and the Brandon Winter Fair, and livestock, and so farming community. But I didn't grow up on a farm, but I grew up in the city. But
Mhm.
yeah, pretty prairie.
Absolutely. Are all three of you ladies from the prairies pretty much?
We are from the prairies. Jake is a Saskatchewan girl, and Shauna is an Alberta girl. So we had all three prairie provinces covered.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And then we were color coded too, like blonde, brunette, redhead. So we
I was such a big fan of the fashions you guys wore because you always look so like clean, crisp, put together, colorful. I heard a lot of Le Chateau was involved in that.
Yeah, we were really lucky to be sponsored by Le Chateau. And I think, I remember when we first started and there was lots of, I think, denim and cowboy boots. Well, I'm 5'2" on a good day if I stand up straight and stick my chest out. And so it's like cowboy boots for me just didn't quite do it. So we kind of started morphing as the 90s went on into more hipper fashions, and then the hair got more hip, and then
Yeah.
and then the next thing we know, we're seeing the Faith Hills and the Martina McBrides, and all of those girls were in the fur collar retro stuff. And so we were super lucky to be sponsored by Le Chateau for 5 years.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, and I
I
got
would
to put on
love that.
yeah, and I got to put on the big shoes. So because Jake's like 5'8", Shonnery's probably 5'5", and I'm 5'2", so it's like I had to stand up like.
Yeah. And that was definitely my favorite clothing store,
Mine too, for a
you
long
know.
time. Hmm.
I still like it. I don't know. I think they kind of shifted focus a little bit towards more like dresses and such later on, didn't they?
I think, I hate to break this to you, Cutie. You're quite a bit younger than me, but I think that as you get older, you just don't fit their. You know what I mean? Like you don't fit their what do they call them? The model, the size models anymore. You
Hmm.
don't, because they were really, really, really. I think for like we were pushing it wearing those clothes. Let's just put it that way. At the age we were, I was in my 30s. I don't think Shauna Ray was yet, but you're pushing it a little bit, but that's kind of, I think it was geared towards younger adults, but
Mm.
really great fashion. And that's one thing we were all about was keeping current and really looking great on stage.
And you did. You
Yeah.
absolutely did. Now, can you tell me about when you guys went to entertain the troops? Because what an experience that must have been.
Yeah, we did that a couple of times. The first time, I believe it was about a 30-day trip, and we started, I think, in Labrador, maybe. I think we did a base out in Eastern Atlantic Canada. And then we went to Bosnia, and we ended up touring around war-torn Bosnia and some of the camps. And it was really, I think what I came home with from that tour was how proud I was of Canada.
Yeah.
Right? Because we got a glimpse of above and beyond what the peacekeepers did. Like there were wives sending supplies for children and women, like military wives were sending care boxes over, and our military peacekeepers were helping old folks re-roof their homes and help schools get back up and running. This kind of thing, like there was a real humanitarian element to it. And I just came back so proud to be a Canadian, which I often did whenever we toured globally. And the other trip that we did was Eritrea, Africa, and it was just after there was a civil war there, I believe, and it was I think it was over water. The things that we as Canadians take so for granted, it was over water access, if I remember my facts correctly, and we were riding in tanks on roads that the Queen of Sheba used to travel, and everybody, all the military personnel always had such great insight into the area that we were visiting, and they gave us like historical facts, and we saw a lot of terrible things too post-war. You know, we saw a lot of displaced people just walking down the street, and we saw some bodies up, you know, like the one thing about both of the tours was that landmines were used in this warfare. And so there would be a body up on the side of a hill that no one could go retrieve because the landmines, right? And this brings me to think of Princess Di, Lady Di, because that was one of her big causes. And this was about that time in the early mid 90s that she was really advocating for better use, like not using and cleaning up and that stuff. So it really took us out of our little idyllic world here in Canada and put us in on a stage that was just so realistic and so much different than what we were ever used to. But the great thing was we got to perform for our troops, and they were so grateful because you know, some of those guys are on, I think, 6 months tour, those guys and women, 6 months of a tour. One of the things that stuck out on the first 30-day tour, we ended up going to my brain is not working so great today, way up north. It's our most north, Alert, I believe it is, Alert, and it was a military station up there, and it was early December, so it's dark the whole time. So at about 7:45 in the morning, you see this little blip of sun, and then bye-bye light, and they're in dark for almost 24 hours a day. And that plays a few tricks on you. You know?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, we think we have it bad when it gets dark at 5 p.m.
Yeah. Yeah. Try living in 23 hours and 45 minutes of dark. Yeah. Yeah. Rough. So those were life-changing experiences for me, really affirming, you know, how great it is to be a Canadian.
No kidding. I can't even imagine seeing all of those things you read about in the news with your own eyes and how it would affect you.
Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty, it's a whole new chapter for those of us who have spent most of our life in Canada. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you guys for doing that. That's a beautiful thing that you went to entertain them.
And you know, one of the things I loved about that is that you'd bid through the government to get the contract and get the tour. And so they would put, we would have a French Canadian performer, and we would have us, and we would have a dance troupe, and there was a comedian troupe on one of the first 30-day tour, and you become a family. You become this little traveling family and get to know people in the entertainment industry other than musicians. And it was a great experience overall.
I always wondered how those gigs came about. So,
yeah. So that's what happens. The government would say, okay, we've got this, we'd like to do this military tour, entertainment tour. What do you got? And so you'd kind of say, this is what we got. And luckily we were chosen a couple of times.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
And you've had the opportunity, obviously, to see probably all of Canada for the most part.
Yes, yes. North, south, east, west. I think the most Canadian gig we ever did was Nunavut,
Mm.
September long weekend. And if I remember correctly, Susan Glukark was on the bill. Kim Mitchell was on the bill. Trooper was on the bill.
Trooper plays everywhere.
I know. And Farmer's Daughter, and I think it might have been, I think Sue Medley was, or Sass Jordan, one, I can't remember. I think maybe Sass it was, but anyway, that was a long time ago.
Yeah.
But here we are, September long weekend, full moon, drinking Canadian beer at this music festival in Nunavut. And it's like, does it get any more Canadian than this?
It's perfect.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Perfect. Yeah. What's some of your favorite places you visited in Canada on the road?
I think that we did a 10-date tour of Newfoundland. That is such a, I encourage every Canadian to do a trip to Atlantic Canada. Newfoundland especially stands out in my mind for the people and friendliness and just fun. And we always loved going to Atlantic Canada, you know, always loved it. And so that I think is probably some of my fondest memories of touring. And of course, we were prairie girls. So every time we stepped on stage at a fair on the prairies or a rodeo, that we really had such great support. I mean, it's a bit of a blur now, but because you're in it, right? You're in it. But when we're together, sometimes we'll say, "Do you remember that time? Do you remember that time?" And can call up some really good memories. And another fun one, I don't know if you're going to ask us about this, is when we went to play the Freewheels Festival in Clermont-Ferrand, France.
Wow.
Do you know about that one? Okay, so I don't think I was on the internet much back then, and I was touring, and so I'm telling one of my really good friends, I said, "Yeah, we're doing this Freewheels Festival." The year before, we had done Euro Disney, just outside of Paris. So we stayed at Euro Disney, and it was about, I don't know, I think it was an hour train ride outside of Paris or whatever. But the guy who booked us for this Freewheels Festival the next year. And so we start to learn a little bit more about it. And I said to my buddy, so we're doing this Clermont-Ferrand, France Freewheels Festival. And he did a little research, and he said, "Do you know what that is?" And I said, "No." He said, "It's a motorcycle convention predominantly attended by Hell's Angels." I went, "Really?" And it was amazing. It was amazing. And when we got there, it was like Joe Strummer and Wishbone Ash, all these really big European kind of rock acts, and us. Mm-hmm. And it's like, and I'm going, what are we doing on stage with these monster people in Europe, of huge followings? But it was really fun. My niece was 20 at the time, and she was backpacking around Europe with her best friend. So they actually ended up meeting us there. And the afternoon of the day we were going to play, we were out in the crowd, and they had an R&B band that was doing Motown, and that's my thing. Like, my first love is R&B, disco, funk, all that stuff. So so I'm just like loving this, and then all of a sudden these women come out, and then all of a sudden they're like taking off their shirts, and it's like, and I've got my hands over my niece's eyes and her friend, and I said, "Your parents will never let you come anywhere with me again." Right? It's just like but it got a little crazy that night. There's 3 guys rushed the stage when we were doing our set. One guy was clamped onto my mini skirt with his teeth.
Well,
need I say more? It's all on video. We have that all on video. And last time we were together in 2016, when we got inducted into the BC Country Music Hall of Fame, we watched that footage and just like laughed our butts off. Because I'm looking at the two of them. I'm always in the middle. So I'm looking at the two of them, and they're looking at me with these eyes. I'm going, "It's okay. We can handle this. It's okay. We can handle this." And I'm trying to do our little go-go moves with some guy who's attached to my skirt with his teeth. Yeah.
Security? Hello.
Security. But you know what? They are security. The security actually didn't end up removing him. Of course, it was a party atmosphere, and everyone had too much to drink. But that's a standout memory for me.
That is wild.
Yeah, it's hard to dance with a 180-pound man clamped onto your skirt with his teeth.
That's an unforgettable event, I'm sure.
It was, yes.
And I'm glad you mentioned the BC Country Hall of Fame ceremony because that was my next question.
Was it?
Was about that experience being inducted into the British Columbia Hall of Fame. Like,
Yeah,
big
yeah,
deal.
that is a big deal.
Yeah.
You know, it's hard with awards. You need to we're always grateful for awards, and to me, awards always signify a validation of how hard we worked.
Mm-hmm.
Because there was a joke in the industry, you know, the hardest working band in showbiz, Farmer's Daughter. And we toured a lot. We were always doing media. When we were on tour, it was like radio starting at 7 in the morning or earlier and going all day and doing TV and radio and meet and greets and sound check and then get on the stage. And then if you're lucky, go back to the hotel if it has a lounge, have a beer, and then, you know, get to bed and repeat. And it was a great fun, but that is what awards mean to me. It's a validation of how hard we worked. So to be inducted to the BC Country Music Hall of Fame was super special because, and also you want to always, you feel extra special when it's your home area. Yeah. That's acknowledging you. So we were really fortunate. We always had great support from the Country Music Association here in British Columbia.
That's something else, man. That's a huge thing. And I mean, BC has a legacy of a lot of great music coming out of that province as well. So fantastic.
Yeah, and we try not to have an inferior complex to Ontario and Toronto, you know.
I like to forget that Ontario's there sometimes. We're here too. Yeah.
Exactly.
Out west. Absolutely.
Out west. Yeah.
So in 2017, you put out a disco record called Mirror Ball.
Oh, you've done your homework.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And you're mentioning that your first love is like soul R&B and whatnot. So tell me about making this album.
Well, you know, since '93, I've been co-writing and working with a producer here on the West Coast named Alan Roger. And Music BC has put out some amazing grant opportunities over the last few years. And he went to, you know, he phoned me up, he said, "Kid, we're gonna make a record. We're gonna apply for this grant and it's gonna be disco." And I said, whoa, I'm in. So writing is something that comes in spurts with me. So I'd written a lot of kids stuff earlier after my son was born, because everything's a song once you have a baby. But and so I really had to discipline myself, because at the same time I'm running my music school, I'm teaching 13 classes a week, and I'm teaching a lot of private lessons, and I'm mentoring a lot of semi-pro and pro level young acts and stuff. So I got a lot going on. So I'd go into the studio and we'd do a couple of days a week and we'd just focus on the writing. So it was and I always am a little insecure about writing, because if I looked at the three components of who I am, I'm a singer first, an entertainer second, and the third thing is a songwriter. So I always felt like, ooh, that was, you know, I got to work a little harder at that, but it was so good. And he's such a creative mind, and we work so well together. So he would just write these disco tracks, and I would go to the studio and listen to them, and he might have an idea for a hook, or I would hear something that gave me a hook, and then we'd just write a song around it. So we were so lucky to get a grant through Music BC, and we recorded that, and we recorded it with some of our favorite players in town. He and I also play in a band called the Polyester Philharmonic. That's my band, and we're a retro band, and I have a horn section. It's like, once a girl has had a horn section in her band. You know, I don't want to say I can die happy, because I still got a lot of singing in me left, but it has been my dream ever since I was a teenager, because I was a teenager in the mid 70s. So I was 13, 14 when disco, 76, 77, 78 was really predominant. And so it is so deep in my musical DNA. that to be able to make a disco record and have Tom Keenlyside, who is one of the world's premier saxophone players, do the horn charts for it, and then have him and Derry Byrne, who also play in my band, come play on the record. It's just like, it was a dream come true. So yeah, I always say, crank it up and clean your house.
A total passion project, right?
Total passion project. And I think, throughout our career as Farmer's Daughter, we pretty much went with our gut instinct a lot of the times, but sometimes you had to rein it in just a little bit, I remember going to Nashville and stuff, and we were just a little bit outside the lines at that time. We were just a bit too eclectic for the Nashville taste at that time, because, or what they thought, what the radio programmers were selling to the radio stations, because in the 90s, I feel that those boundaries became very kind of narrow. And we dribbled outside, we'd do a little bit of a gospel flavored thing, or we would do a bluesy, or we weren't country. We had some underlying influences too. So, but I digress. So, I think at this point in my life, in my 50s, doing things that I want to do is really important.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Not feeling, and the industry has changed completely since we were in it. Completely. Yeah. There's so many platforms to get your music heard on that the audience is going to find you no matter what, your passion project, someone's going to like it. It's not that you're trying to put your passion project inside that slot. Right now, there's so many platforms for people to find you.
And you spent enough of time in your career when trying to fit into this mold to get on radio. I can imagine that if you're doing a little bit of gospel flavor and a little bit of blues, radio stations are going to go, well, we can't play that because it's not this, it's not that. And then it's like, what station is going to play? Yeah.
So Canadian radio was so good to us. They were so good to us, mostly. There's just a couple of stations I could bring up other things about. But anyway, that's one person's opinion. But, Canadian stations embraced us. And so that was my personal take about going to Nashville, feeling like we had to really fit into that slot. And and we dribbled outside the lines a little bit. Because I think one guy even said, well, what are you? Are you a pop band? Because we really straddled the pop line. And that was to our benefit, because I can't tell you how many times after a show, and we loved going out and meeting the audience after a show, somebody would come up to us and say, and they felt like they had to whisper it, I don't know if I should say this, but I don't really like country music. But my friend dragged me here, and I love you girls. We were almost like a stepping stone to what was really, the stuff that was going on at the time, because we did dribble outside the lines a little bit. And so many times people became country fans because they liked our music. And we weren't what they thought of country. And when Jake and Shauna Ray asked me to join the band, and I think it was 93, I thought, oh, I grew up on country and I don't know if I want to do country. And then I started listening to what country was in the 90s. And it's like, this isn't country. This is the Eagles, 1974, which I love, right? All the vocal bands, and I absolutely loved the sound. And then of course, when we sang together, there was this blend that was almost, they are family, they're cousins, first cousins. And I fit right in, and we developed the sound, and then we just went from there. So I really liked what country was doing, because it did lean a little bit more to the pop side of things rather than the twang side of things, the Western country and Western. So it got a little wider in that way, and then we went a little bit wider than that, and that served us well when we were doing concerts, because we love to entertain, right up to doing the Jeffersons theme in choir gowns, well, we're moving on up to the east side. Right. So it's like we would throw shit like that into the concert all the time, or do I Got the Music in Me and come out in disco wigs, like, and retro 70s disco wear, because we loved putting shows together and entertaining and adding those little bits. And I was lucky enough to work with a guy in Winnipeg in the 80s who really mentored me, and he had spent time in Toronto in the 70s, and then we ended up being a lounge duo and having a band in the 80s before I moved to LA, and then to Vancouver. And he taught me, he taught me some great ways to twist covers a little bit to make it really interesting for your audience. It's slightly different. And so when I came into Farmer's Daughter, I said, we got to do a clever cover. And so the first albums, and when you do a first album, and I think Shania was an example of this. I don't think she toured her first album because she goes, I don't have enough for a concert. Right? I think that's the reasoning behind it. If I remember the facts correctly, I could be making shit up. I often do. But anyway, I think that's what the facts were. So when the second album came out, boom, she's got all this material for a big tour, and then the rest is history. So with us, we had to, after the first album, and we had to start go out and incorporate some covers and stuff. We would do fun things like That's Where Son of a Preacher Man, the Dusty Springfield, really swampy Memphis sound. Well, we made it country swing. And we put it into our show, and it went over, and we had recorded it. And then, did we record it? Yeah, we did. Yeah, it got radio play. And then we did, one of my favorite things was we did Joe Walsh, Life's Been Good to Me So Far. We kind of countrified it a little bit, and it was so fun to play live, and people respond to it, and it was, building that audience the old way, because it's totally different now. We had to go out and prove ourselves and gain a fan. Right? Nowadays, you post something on YouTube, or Facebook, or whatever, your Instagram, or whatever platform you're using, and all of a sudden you're getting hits and likes. And if these people become a fan from that platform, if you come to tour in their city, they're probably going to come out and see you. Right?
Exactly.
So that's a benefit from today's platforms for sure, because you can build that fan base without even leaving your music room.
It's so true.
Yeah. So, but we went out and did it the old fashioned way. We did it, but radio helped with that too. Radio and television appearances, because I think one of the milestone moments in my career, and I think Jake and Shauna Ray would say the same thing, is the first festival that we sang at where people were singing the words to our songs. You see them in the audience mouthing the words to your songs that you've recorded and that are getting radio play. And that was like a moment that's like, people are really paying attention and they really care.
Yes.
So that, it's like Sally Field, you like us, you really like us. But it was that, right? It was, wow, this medium is actually reaching these people and they're paying attention. And aren't we lucky?
That's the moment you hope for, I think.
Yeah,
as an original artist, is that you've reached them.
That exactly that, and when a drag queen show does you.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I bet.
We did some work in Vegas in the mid '90s, and the Nevada casino circuit, and you're driving down the strip in Vegas, and it's so and so is Reba, and so is Dolly, and we just thought, wow, you kind of know you've made it when the drag queens want to do you, right? So jump ahead a couple of years. We're in Calgary. We're at a London Drugs working with Revlon. We were part of the Kiss for the Cure campaign, awareness of breast cancer research, and it was a charity. And so the makeup artist was lovely, and he's doing our face and Revlon stuff before we do a little acoustic set in the makeup department at London Drugs. And he goes, I don't know if I should tell you girls this, but I'm in a drag show and we're doing you. Are you kidding me? So of course we had to go.
Yes.
So we showed up that night at the drag bar, right? And I'll tell you, those girls had better arms than I had.
Wow.
They were beautiful. They were fabulous. And it was so fun. And it was just such a great night. And we really felt honored that they would sing one of our songs.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, you also obviously teach singing, right?
I do.
So, and you wrote a book on the subject too. So
I did. Yeah.
How did you develop a curriculum to be a music teacher? How did you put that together?
That is a really good question. Okay, so here's kind of what happened. So Farmer's Daughter, kind of wrapped up in 2001, late 2001, 2002.
Mm-hmm.
And I really want, there's two things in my life I wanted to be: a singer and a mom. And I was 35, and I thought, I don't want to miss this opportunity to have a baby. So I ended up having a son in 2003, and it just kind of changes your priorities, and it changes the world
Mm-hmm.
for you personally. So I thought, I can't tour anymore. I can't, like, we did a few gigs with him when he was little, and it's just like, this isn't going to work. And so I thought, what am I going to do? Because all I know how to do is sing. And I was lucky enough to gig around town here in Vancouver, in the casinos with my polyester Philharmonic. And one of the things I love doing is lounge, piano voice, and small band stuff. And so I had those gigs going on locally, which was great, and just the right amount. I wasn't out like in the 80s. I think I worked 6 nights a week, 48 weeks a year,
Wow,
in Winnipeg. So in the Winnipeg lounge and bar scene. So I had the right amount. And then I thought, I'm going to try teaching. And so over 10 years of me sharing things with students, and I'm kind of self-taught. I'm self-taught up until the point I was 25, and I moved to Los Angeles, and I went to Musicians Institute. Is that a dog or a cat?
It's a cat.
Hello, kitty.
Always wants to be a part of the show.
No kidding. Hi, I'm here. Yeah, extroverted cat. So when I went to LA, I late in my career, after working since I was 19 to 25, I worked at the lounge bar scene in Winnipeg, had some great mentors there, Tom Dahl being one of them. And then I thought, I want to challenge myself. I feel like I should learn to read music, and I should better myself. And so I looked into the program at Musicians Institute in Los Angeles. So I went there for a year and took their vocal program, and it cleaned up some bad habits I had, and it enlightened me to a lot of things that I could do with my voice. And so I moved from LA to Vancouver in 91. And I met the girls, 91. And I think I met the girls in 92. And then we went on Farmer's Daughter. And I would do lounge gigs around Vancouver and stuff, and small bar gigs. And then I was on the road for 10 years with Farmer's Daughter, then got off the road and said, had my son, and thought, I think I'll teach. And I didn't know how to teach. And so I started realizing that if someone says, how do I do this? I would sing it, because I could do it. And after all my years experience, and I would tell them how their body feels. So it's like, okay, this is how it feels when I'm doing this the right way. So I'm taking in a breath, and then I'm using my diaphragm support, and I'm dropping my jaw, and this is what happens. And so all these things that people wanted to know, I was able to tell them how to do it. And I started taking notes. And my students, if they watch this, they'll laugh, because everybody gets a blue sheet at the end of their performance telling them what they did great and what they need to work on and how they can work on it. So I asked a lot of my students who had been with me for a few years if they kept their blue sheets, which a lot of them did, because that's what you're paying me for, that expertise. And I started combing through and saw a pattern. And so I wrote a manual called the 5-point singing system, because really great singing boils down to 5 points. It's like a pilot checklist. And it starts with breathing and diaphragm support, and then those two work together for creating the right placement in your voice. And then there's something called vocal path, which is the trajectory that your voice comes out of your body. And the last thing is manipulating the shape of your mouth to modify or open the vowels. Right?
Yes.
Yeah. So those 5 things, you can pretty much fix 98% of vocal issues with one of those 5 points.
Breathing is everything.
Well, you would know that. You would know that, because you use your voice for a living. So you always have to fuel up. And I just have to say, and it's so great that you're not one of these broadcasters, but I've been listening to different stations lately. and I'm hearing a trend, and this was brought up to me by a vocal coach named Tamara Beatty. She's worked on The Voice, and I got to do a week-long retreat with her for the Peak Performance Project, it was called. And we were sequestered with a bunch of musicians. That was no fun at all. And we were vocal coaching them. So they were young, professional musicians starting their careers, and we were mentoring them. So she said she had been attending a lot of the ears, nose, and throat conventions and stuff, or a few of them anyway. And there's this thing called vocal fry. And now that I became aware of it, I hear it everywhere. So you as a broadcaster and me as a singer and speaker, we know that we have to take in air, right into our lungs and use our diaphragm support, which is, I feel it as little pulls or engagement of the ab muscles to help support our voice. So this vocal fry is causing a generation, especially of young women, to drop where their speaking voice should be down into their chords like this. And then there's this rattle. Right. And so there's this rattle called, and it's really hard on
like that.
And that's becoming their speech pattern. I lived through the Valley Girl, right? We lived through the Valley Girl and Up Talk and all this stuff. So every few years a new vocal trend comes by, but this one's extremely damaging because that is a physical reaction that after a long use, it might really damage your vocal cords because you're dropping down into this area. It's rubbing, right? So I encourage you, if you are a teen to 40-year-old woman, think about pitching up your speaking voice out of your throat, because that's going to save you in the long run. Because and the big approach that I take in my teaching is vocal preservation. Right. So I'm 41 years into my career, actually more. I'm 57. I've been singing since I was 15, and I've been singing professionally since I was 16. And there's only one time in my life I had to cancel a gig because I had laryngitis. And I think that's the only time I can remember I had laryngitis. It was a farmer's daughter gig.
It's incredible. You've taken such good care of it.
Yeah, well, and I think that I didn't really understand what I was doing until I started teaching other people. I did get some insight at MI, and I got a lot of great information there. And I took that information and built upon it from my own experience and sharing with people what they should be doing. And so it's really kept me on to task too for keeping preservation in my voice too. I had this great experience in Palm Springs. We have dear friends we go and stay with. We missed it this year though because of the pandemic, but this would have been our 10th year. But my friend Tom Keenlyside, great sax player, he was playing a gig in Rancho Mirage or somewhere, and I went to see him. We all went, and in the band was an 84-year-old man from the Frank Sinatra era. He was actually in the group that backed up Frank Sinatra, the vocalists. And if you would have closed your eyes, he sang like he was 30.
Yeah.
And so he sounded so in control. He did not sound like he was in his 80s. And I went up to him after and I said, I just want to tell you, I am just so impressed. And I said, I knew he was in his 80s. I said, I'm assuming you're in your 70s. And I said, I'm a vocal coach too, and I just want to know what your secret is. And he said, I sing every day. And so for me, one of the things I teach about singing is that it's athletic. So, and that's why we see some of the older acts who can't really sing or support their notes anymore. You got to keep your aerobic capacity up. You got to keep some muscle tone up. You got to keep athletic so that you can still deliver. Often I say big notes are like batting a ball out of the park. It's like you shift that energy and you whack that ball and away it goes. Well, that's a similar thing to singing big rock star and diva notes. You got to take in the air and make that energy happen from your diaphragm support. But if you're like out of shape and stuff, it just won't happen anymore. So singing is very athletic. Yeah.
I mean, and I've also been a singer for a long time. I know that if you're really trying to get that aerobic energy, you try doing it on the treadmill and that'll really get you in shape.
That'll get you in shape.
Another thing I learned, and tell me if this is correct, but the way to make sure you're breathing from your diaphragm is if when you take a breath in, your shoulders don't move.
Yes, that's one of my big things. So so that's a really big thing. I watch people, and if they take a breath in and their shoulders go up, that means they're pulling in their tummy instead of popping. You have to feel some kind of expansion through your midsection. I feel my stomach kind of comes out. Some people feel it sideways. I have a really good friend who's a killer singer, Gord Maxwell. It comes out the back. He says, I feel the expansion in the back. So as long as you're feeling that expansion, but if you're taking in air and you're sucking in, then the shoulders come up, you're creating tension, and you're not getting in the fuel, which is your breath, that you need to get under those notes with once you, that's a really good tip.
And a lot of people don't even realize that they're doing it. And when they start trying to actually breathe from their diaphragm, they feel weird. They're like, it's uncomfortable. I'm like, that's because you're not used to it yet.
Yeah, exactly. And you know who the perfect breathers are? Babies.
Yeah.
Babies are the perfect breathers. When you watch them, their little tummy, their breath starts from their tummy, rise and fall. We've become a harried society of chest breathers where we only breathe from the chest up. And I also make the correlation to yoga breaths. So if you do yoga, it's the same feeling as a yoga breath, but we're taking it in through our mouth instead of our nose, because in yoga you take it in through the nose and warm everything up, but because of the small spaces in songs, you want to get that air in quickly. So, and breath, let me just give you a quick little vocal lesson. So under the headline of breath, it's getting that direction. I call it air in, tummy out, and because I work with a lot of kids, I guess tummy has stuck. Air in, stomach out, some kind of expansion. And then it's the frequency of the breath in the song. That's really important. So how often are you breathing in the body of the song? And the third thing is, not every breath is the same size.
Yeah.
Because different ranges of your voice have different demands. So if you're singing a 5-word phrase in your chest voice where your low notes live, you might only need to take in a 50% size breath. But if you're singing a 6-word phrase with rock star and diva notes, the last two words, then you got to maximize that breath to maybe 90%, because those notes need a lot more support.
You got to belt that to the back of the room.
You got to belt that to the back of the room and not push from here, but support from here.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
What a great lesson.
There you go. A mini lesson with Angela. I love it. I never knew I would love teaching as much as I do, because there's a psychology, we're so tied to our voices. Next to our faces, our voices are probably the most recognizable thing about us. Right? And so I haven't talked to somebody for 10 years and I'll go, oh, hi, Barb. And she'll go, how'd you know it was me? I go, yeah, the sound of your voice. There's a lot of trauma that's been done unknowingly, but still the same. I can't tell you how many times someone has come into me in tears and said, I've always wanted to be a singer. I know I can sing, but the choir director singled me out when I was a kid and told me to just move my mouth. That kind of stuff. Or my brother and mom would tell me, don't sing, you're horrible. And they carry that. Right? Yeah. It's like my brother. And so people don't realize the effect of their words. Like my brother, I was a chubby kid. And in the 70s, there was a TV detective named Frank Cannon. And unfortunately, he was about 300 pounds. That was my brother's nickname for me, was Cannon. Okay. So about 2 years ago, now he's 63 and I'm 57. And I said, yeah, well, you used to call me Cannon, as in Frank Cannon. That gave me a complex. I carried that with me for years. He goes, I never did. I said, yes, you did. So people will make offhanded comments that stay with us forever.
Yes.
And I have all these women especially, and there's a magical age where, the kids are a little older, the career is established, they want to sing. That's a real point in time where a lot of women say, I really want to sing. And it's finding your voice, literally, in the world. It's finding your singing voice. It's finding your voice in the world. And it's really freeing, and I think it's so important. I don't care if you're good. I don't care. I have tools to get you to sing on tune. I have tools that can help you color with emotion. The whole point is, and I think I heard Jan Arden say this to Peter Zosky on CBC one time. He said, and I'm paraphrasing, he said something like, I watched you in sound check and you just sang your heart out. And it was just sound check, And she said, well, Peter, Jan, she said, I don't sing because I think I'm good. I sing because it feels good. right? And that's just it. It feels good to sing. That feeling for me of when I've got a great song, like Now That I'm on My Own, a Farmer's Daughter song, one of my favorites.
That is one of my favorites.
I know. It's like you get that feeling. It's akin to the feeling of falling in love. That's what singing well-crafted songs to an audience that's with you, that is the emotion I feel. It's very similar to the feeling of falling in love. It releases endorphins in your brain. It just gives you this other plane, awareness. And that's, I think for a lot of us in the industry, that is much of the addiction to the industry, is the creating of the music and the way it makes us feel.
That's been a hard part about this pandemic. When they've taken away the ability to sing like for people in an environment live. It's really hard to cope mentally without the ability to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I've discovered from going to in-person teaching to classes online is that we need that human energy. We need to be in the same room and feel that vibration. And harmony is a perfect example of that.
Harmony makes me feel so good. Like vocal harmony. Sometimes I prefer singing the harmony just because it's so enjoyable to hear the two voices when they hit, right?
Yes.
Or two or more, right?
Yes. And this was circling back to why we're here. That was the magic of Farmer's Daughter. On so many levels. We were blessed that we had a nice blend. We had some great songs, and it was 10 years of seeing our beautiful country in parts of the world, and creating relationships that will last a lifetime. And it wasn't all roses, though. Like every band, ups and downs, egos, and stumbling blocks, and hurdles to get over. And but with every great memory, they're all bittersweet. And so, but I don't think I would really do anything differently, and it's funny how your one step leads to another step, whether it's lateral or forward or backwards, but it's like that God bless the broken road. I mean, that's what life is.
Very well said.
Yes.
Tell me about the kids' books and the kids' album and how that came about.
You really did your homework, didn't you? I'm
covering my bases.
Thanks. So when my son Alex was born, it's like love. There's just love. Everything becomes a song. So, bum full of poo poo, doo 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 doo. You got a bum full of poo poo, and I mean that's the melody is Guantanamera, but bum full of poo poo. So we'd go to the change room with doing the cha cha to this song. And then, get on the party, I'm writing all these songs, do what you gotta do, so everything's a song. So it's funny how so that happened when he was born, everything becomes a song. And one of my students' mothers opened up this retail store that was the Canadian version of Build-A-Bear. And so it was called Snuggable Huggables, and she had this store, and it was where birthday parties would happen, and the kids would come in and purchase an animal, and then they could accessorize and dress them up and have this thing. So she said, I'd really like an album to complement, write about the characters and stuff. So again, Alan Roger and I said, yeah, we can do that. And we ended up writing this kids album full of music about all these different characters. And I wanted to really make it about different styles of music too. So I would, we would do Country Dog City Kitty. So that's one of the kids' songs that's a big hit. So Alan would sing, well, I'm a country dog, and I'd say, I'm a city kitty, and we'd do this, and it was just doom, 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 it's a old country tune kind of vibe. But the moral of the story was, we're as different as day and night, and we can still be friends, and that's all right. Right? So there was always little underlying messages for the kids, and we'd dress up in the costumes and we'd do the performances. And to this day, up into the pandemic, I was doing like 12 to 15 performances every spring for this for a program out here called Ready, Set, Learn, where they bring in the incoming kindergartens, and then they'll bring in the current kindergartens and the grade ones, and sometimes the grade twos, and I sing all these songs for them, and it's so fun. I get them singing and dancing. So from working with the store, which it ended up not doing very well and closing, but I had all this material. And so it got a Juno nomination in 2005.
Oh, congratulations.
Yeah, thanks. And so we have a Juno, which is like, people go, can I touch it? I'll go, it'll cost you $5. It's so nice to, again, validating how hard we worked. But so it kind of kept growing. And with Alex being little and singing and writing, and then we started writing for the second album. And Alan said, I was walking to the studio today and I met this cat and he was acting like a dog. And so I said, what is his name? It's Frank. So we wrote this song, Frank the cat thought he was a dog. You know, bark like a dog, meow like a cat. If you mix them up, nothing wrong with that. Meow. So again, it's like, you know, if you're different, being different doesn't mean it's wrong. Mm-hmm. Bark like a dog, meow like a cat. If you mix them up, nothing wrong with that. And I think in the world that we're living in today, that song for little kids is really, really affirming that your friends can be different colors, different religions, different, you know, different, mm-hmm. Gender identity different than you, all these things. And so I always wanted to have some fun, maybe a little moral of the story. And I wanted to do different styles of music because at that time when I was writing, the school boards here were starting to slash the arts. Mm. That bugs me. Like I am a product of 1970s elementary school music programs that were so strong, that gave me the confidence to go forward into my life and become a professional singer.
Absolutely.
And it all started right there in grade 4, you know, when I had a fantastic music teacher that said to my mother when I was in grade 6, she's really a natural. She's really a natural. And so let her find her way, basically, you know, let her find, and I did. And then I went from there and to a program in junior high, and then finding kids who were musical and performing in assemblies and putting little bands together. And then when I got to high school, there actually was a band, like a band with like rock band. Yeah. That was an extracurricular activity. It was called CP Express. We named it. It was Crokes Plains High School in Brandon, Manitoba. And then we did local TV and we did the summer fair and we started to do gigs. And then I got picked up by a local dance band when I was 16. And then one thing led to another. Yep. And here we are, like 40 years later. So it's been a great ride, but I really feel like we need to keep the arts alive. And when they were slashing things, I thought, okay, how can I be a little musically educational on this CD too, for these kids that are getting gypped at the education level. So all these things came into play and I just started writing kids songs, you know, and I'd test them on Alex. It would either be, or
He knows, right?
He knows, my biggest critic. Yeah.
You nailed it on the head when you said confidence, because I think that the music programs teaching kids how to perform, even in groups, for their Christmas concerts or whatever, it gives them that confidence to go forward in life. It's not just about music talent.
Yeah. It's about even knowing how to use a microphone. I'll say to my teenagers, you're going to you could possibly be the CEO of your own company. And you need to address your people, or you could be the prime minister. You need to be able to work a microphone, work a room, be confident, not be afraid of the microphone. You know, those are, I have so many parents of my students who go, oh, I could never do that. It's like, yeah, you could, if you let me train you. But you know, it's like the kids are really getting this, like they're tech savvy. They're the ones that after years with me, they're so confident. And the parents will come and say, you know, she gave this presentation at school and she knocked it out of the park. And then all the other kids who didn't know how to use a mic or couldn't hear them, and you know, their kids stood up to the mic and projected and delivered. And it's like, that's the kind of skills that these kind of programs give these kids, their life skills, right?
Yeah, it's such a bigger picture that the government doesn't see.
Yeah.
Sometimes when they're
yeah.
I probably shouldn't get into Alberta government, but
no, let's not go there.
Let's not go there. What is your favorite Farmer's Daughter deep cut?
Oh.
A deep cut that never was a single. I'm going to play a clip of it on the show too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I think, you know what? I knew you were going to ask me something like that. So I hauled out these.
Yes.
Oh, I got to tell you a story about these. So, sometimes you go to Safeway and they'll have the old record. Well, this is probably 10 years ago. They had a bin by the checkouts of CDs. Sometimes it's books, sometimes it's movies, happen to be CDs. Mm-hmm. So I'm going through it and I went, I bought them all.
Nice.
Because I didn't want my friends to see it in the bin. No, it's okay. But we were a little bit 10 years beyond they're clearing out their warehouse, I'm sure, Universal. But I bought them all. And I realized, good thing I bought them because I don't have any copies. I give them away. But I think one of my favorite songs that never made it to radio is called This, That, and the Other Thing off Making Hay.
This, That, and the Other Thing.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nice. Yes, we're going to play a clip. I'm also going to play a clip from Mirrorball.
Okay.
So everyone gets a taste of what you've been working on since.
Awesome.
How do you feel about the current state of country music and like the Luke Bryans and like this, what do they call it? Like tailgates and shaking your.
I'm going to be I'll be completely, right. I'll be completely honest. I kind of backed out. I don't listen to country like I used to. And one of the reasons is because it all started sounding the same. Mm-hmm. And so even when we were in it, there's this, and some people in the record label industry or the radio industry might disagree with me, but this is my take. It was cyclical in that there were the hat acts, the Clint Blacks and the Garth Brooks, and everybody chased the hat acts. The labels chased the hat acts. Mm-hmm. Why not think outside the box and go think about what the next thing's going to be instead of do what's being done already? So then, and then there was a fair influx of 3-girl groups. Mm-hmm. Us, the Dixie Chicks, Lace. There was those sisters. I can't remember their names. Sorry, girls. But it kind of cyclical. Then what I feel a healthy industry is when you have a balance. Mm-hmm. Of a lot of things, and you have varying sounds and themes. Mm-hmm. So right now, what little I've listened to, I feel that the themes aren't as varied, and the sound kind of is a bit predictable. Yeah. And so I would like to see it go back a little bit more. And I don't know why that is, because I'm not in that genre anymore. Mm-hmm. And I'm not even really in the music business anymore. Well, I am, because I my whole life has been in the music business, but I don't, it's too hard for me to keep on top of everything because it's coming at you from everywhere. Mm-hmm. And if I had to say to young artists, I'm not even sure what I would say to you, how to get started in this business. But one thing I do advocate, and very strongly, songwrite. Yes. Learn to be really hone your songwriting skills, because that is something that will take you far. So you might be more of an introvert that doesn't like being on stage singing in front of people, but you might end up being a killer songwriter. Mm-hmm. That people like me love to sing those kinds of songs. Because I love being on stage. Give me a microphone and a light. Find your light. But I just I'll say again, I have not really sat down and listened to country music for hours on end of late. But the few times I've stumbled upon the station, I'll just go, mm-hmm. I'm not sure that sounds any different than, I'm not hearing anything fresh. But then again, yeah, someone may argue with me, but then again, I haven't really listened intently.
I agree with that. I mean, there's people like Chris Stapleton who are adding a bit more flavor that's more of a soul to it.
Totally. So see, we're straddling the bluesy soul, right? Mm-hmm. And that, to me, that's what you want. You want that diversity mm-hmm. in a genre and on radio. And that's what I think will keep your listeners. Mm-hmm. Right?
Agreed. Mm-hmm. Have you ever considered creating your own podcast? It's a hot thing right now.
I know. I might come to you and get some coaching on that. I thought, what I'd love to do? I would love to do a disco revisit. Yes. I'd love to talk about disco in the 70s, but or even with my 5-point singing system. I mean, so I've often thought, but I laugh and go, oh, Kelman, you can barely keep up with the pace you're doing now. Like you're going to add one more thing, you know, but I love creating. We are creators and we have to have those outlets.
Yes.
And so, yes, I have considered that. I'm just not there yet. And when I am, I'm going to come to you for some advice.
I'll give you all the advice or help you need.
Okay, thank you.
This has definitely been something that's kept me motivated during this time of like having to stay home all the time, is just being able to have this kind of an outlet. So it's like you want to keep busy doing things you love.
Yeah, absolutely. And that you're, and you know, and you learn something about yourself and about your craft every time you do a new episode. So yeah.
True. And I've had such great opportunities to talk to people like you. This has been so great.
Oh, thank you.
I really wanted just to wrap things up asking you if Farmer's Daughter will ever play together again.
Well, you know, we never say never. Geographically, it's difficult.
Right.
Because Shauna Ray's in Florida, Jake's in Atlanta, and I'm here in North Vancouver. And so, but we never say never. And sometimes an opportunity comes up and we can say we'd love to. And so yeah, I mean, you know, we love singing. We love singing together. And I just, I try to keep myself in really good shape in hopes that those opportunities come up.
So you don't have to like kind of like, you know, get in shape right before a tour. Right. It's just like, I'm ready. Let's get on the road.
Yeah. Let's go. I've been waiting for this. Yeah. Because never do we want someone to look at us and go, oh, they're a little bit beyond their best before date.
I feel so bad for people that I had to have to go through that. Yeah.
Well, you know what you do? It's part of it, right? It's part of the industry. It's like you gotta keep on top of it.
Feel young, stay young.
Yeah.
Take care of yourself. You'll be all right.
Exactly.